Hello, welcome to Comic Tropes. I'm your host, Jim. This episode, we're talking about the 1987 classic, Ruck Bud and His Screeching Commandos.
Jim,
An independent.
Jim, I'm actually here. I appreciate the effort, but we're doing trash movie Bonanza this time, not Comic Tropes.
Oh, okay. So wait, Chris, what you're saying is you don't want to talk about the fact that in 1987, Jim Lee ripped off this idea of the blue spandex with the yellow pouches from a book, obviously before X-Men.
Jim,
okay,
we have trash to talk about.
That's right.
Jamie, hit it.
Trash Movie Bonanza with your hosts, Jim and Chris.
Hello, everybody. Welcome to Trash Movie Bonanza. This is a show where two friends apparently passive-aggressively taunt each other with bad movies. I'm one half of the hosts here. My name is Chris. I also host a show called Comic Tropes about comic books. And with me, as always, Jimmy Jams. Who are you?
Guys, what's up? I am a professional freelance illustrator and comic book artist, if you can believe that, and author and artist of such hit indie titles like Girl Scouts, which you can purchase off my website below.
In the description, as always.
Information.
Jim, I feel like, in a way, what we're doing tonight is the closest to what we originally had as an idea for this show when we talk to each other, because we each chose something that's just garbage in a way.
Yeah, completely.
I have things to say, and I think it's entertaining to watch and to talk about, but it would be very, very hard to find something artistically relevant to dig into here. This is trash.
I know. I don't feel bad about it though, because I feel like with our previous episodes, we actually gave people really good, fun B movies to watch.
No question.
But this one lives up to the trash part of our show title.
Absolutely. Yeah. Some people in comments are like, hey, Night of the Comet isn't trash. And I'm sort of like, all right. I mean, you got us there. Like, yeah, we're gonna stretch the boundaries of what we want to cover here and there. Yeah. But if you mostly tune in because you see the title and you're like, that's what I want, well, I think we have it tonight.
Here we go.
And a little bit, yours is a little trashier, right?
Yes. So, well, right off the bat, my pick is Evil Toons. And that's from, I saw both dates released, 91 and 92. There's always multiple release dates for these movies online. Chris, I'm going to be honest, just right off the bat. The main reason I forced you to watch this was I just wanted to see what your reaction would be to the most surreal moment in cinematic history of David Carradine putting a noose around his neck.
I literally texted you as I started to watch this. I go, what the hell am I watching here? Folks, oh my God, the way this starts mirrors real life in such a dark way. It's just the movie.
As you're watching it for the first time, your brain is just like, what? No, this isn't happening. This can't be happening. There's no way. And he's also holding the Necronomicon. There's this demonic book in this movie.
Trouble, let your conscience be your guide.
I want to say right off the bat, Fred Olen Ray directed this flick, and Fred has like 200 B movies under his belt. He did Alienator, which is an awesomely terrible movie, Hollywood Chainsaw Hookers. The list goes on and on. They shot this movie in 8 days. It definitely shows. The budget was like $140,000.
That doesn't necessarily show, but yeah.
So, but also, I did little to no research on this part, Chris, but my idea is that a bunch of scumbag Hollywood producers were sitting around talking about the success of Roger Rabbit. And they were like, what if we did like a naughty R-rated Roger Rabbit with
I think you're right.
horror? And then they went around to all the animation studios in LA
Yeah.
and realized how
Too
expensive animation is.
Right.
And then they realized we can only do 90 seconds of animation in this entire movie.
I'll say that they use those 90 seconds fairly well because it sort of feels like you're getting a little more than that, but like we've added it up. It's out there. Like it's very little animation actually. They do lots of little tricks with like, you know, from a different angle, and you're still hearing the voice of the cartoon character so that you're feeling like it's in the scene. But anyway, I mean, yeah, I wonder if they got David Carradine with like the promise of what his role would be, and he was like, "Ooh,
Yeah.
I'll do that for cheap."
I'm assuming all of his footage too was shot in like 2 days, 1 or 2 days, since they only had the
Probably
8-day
one.
schedule. And then there's a little bit of a Roger Corman tie-in with this. Roger just passed away recently as we record this, like a week ago. And
Yeah.
so Fred pitched this idea to Roger, and Roger said, I'll pass on it because you bringing up this animation idea, this is a terrible idea and it's not going to be cost effective. So I'm going to pass on it, which Roger was right because he was a really smart producer.
He was.
And then, not to fast forward too much, but there's a scene Dick Miller is in this movie, and there's a scene in this movie where Dick Miller is watching himself in Bucket of Blood, which is a famous Roger Corman movie.
And Roger Corman's company did produce My Choice, which we'll get to later tonight.
Yes, that's correct.
So
it's weird to, I guess we can basically say the basic premise of this movie is Dick Miller, who plays this scumbag character, Bert, hires these 4 bimbos to show up at an old mansion, and they're going to spend the night there.
Mansion is generous, just to be clear. Mansion is generous. It's a house.
That's true. That's true. I guess for me, I'm thinking of it as they were trying to present it as like,
I think
a
you're right.
Haunted mansion.
And they also try to present it as though it's like somehow isolated, but it is clearly in a residential neighborhood where neighbors would be like all of 10 feet away.
Yeah.
Even though they act like, oh, no one can hear what's going on there. And it's so isolated, all these scary things happening in the house. But it's just like the establishing shot just clearly shows houses all over the place on a regular, downtown LA street.
That's true. And so right off the bat, you get a sense of what the movie is because the girls get out of Dick Miller's van and the camera is just blatantly, exploring their bodies. They're leaning over, showing their asses. And you get a sense when they immediately start in with their dialogue, like, oh, these are like adult entertainment actors. These are not actresses. These are basically porn stars.
Now, you girls understand the deal, right? I drop you off, clean up the house real good for the new owners. I pick you up Monday morning, and you each get $100.
My mouth's watering just thinking about it.
A lousy $100. Think there'd be an easier way to earn some spending cash.
There is, but you have to beat around the bush to get it.
They literally are, except for like the main girl, basically, who was still just like a B movie sort of actress, and she might literally be the worst actress among them, ironically.
You're talking about Gabrielle Monique, who plays Megan.
I am talking about Gabrielle Monique, who I think was in one of the Beastmaster movies. I remember her from like that, but I think that's
Deathstalker.
Deathstalker, thank you.
And
thank you.
For Silk and a bunch of... She's a B movie, queen. She has her stripes that she's earned, but it... Dude,
this is why we have Jim, by the way, folks, like to correct me. This is people think that I like know lots of trivia, and it's like, yeah, maybe for comics, but like, trust me, when you start talking B movies, this guy is the king, folks. Can I quickly interrupt to just establish one thing that happens before the girls happen here? We talk about how it's a little weird how David Carradine is in this movie, but we didn't explicitly say that he hangs himself at the beginning.
Yes, I should have just said that.
I mean,
I said he puts a noose
dark.
around his neck, but
He puts the noose around his neck and, like, I guess becomes a ghost or something like that. We don't know why he's doing that plot-wise, but that's what we're talking about because if you don't know, that's how he inadvertently apparently killed himself through autoerotic asphyxiation. If you don't know, folks, that is how he went out. So it is very weird. It literally feels like it's in poor taste that they have this out there to rent.
Right.
But
like they didn't.
Doesn't stop me.
They didn't go back to edit that out. Or,
no.
You know.
You're right, because he could have just like taken a pill or something like that, or they could have cut away and just be like, he passed away. Like they could have had a text or a voiceover. They could have literally just said like, and he passed away, because it's not important how he dies. That's not key to the story at all. It's just it's the first thing you see, and now you're like, whoa, what is this movie doing? This movie doesn't care, because it's like you say, like within a minute or two, we're staring at these girls' butts and chests and stuff.
Dick Miller is ogling them and is a total creep and is paying them each $100 to clean this house. And then when they get into the house, the lead girl, her name is which one is she? She is Terry. Terry somehow knows the mythology of this house, that there was like murders and stuff that happened in the house.
But it's $100. So you kind of, it's like, this is probably haunted, but on the other hand, $100 each.
Yeah.
What was that stuff you were saying about the new owners disappearing?
Well, this house has a long history of mayhem and madness. Pretty strange and unusual and weird things have happened here.
Chris, these are girls that need, to buy new. It's established that they're students.
I think that they say that they're in a sorority together. I'm pretty sure that they say that. Of course, in real life, these women are at least 30.
They're 30.
They're just not 19 or 20-year-olds. They're just not.
Especially Terry and the other blonde. The two of them are like 30-year-old adult actresses.
Literally be 40 or something. They're literally be. It's crazy how they just do not look like kids.
Yes, and then we're introduced to a neighbor character, Mr. Hinchlow.
Yeah, weird name, but I guess he was also a real actor.
Yeah, he was a famous character actor. I forgot to write down his name, but
it doesn't matter.
It doesn't really matter, Chris.
I swear, like we already have established, this movie was made on the cheap and made really quick. The only reason these guys are in the movie is it must be that they lived close and they were like, oh, I get to see some pretty girls. You know what I mean?
Yes.
Like, there's no way they should be doing this movie.
Yeah.
Dick Miller, Gremlins, like Gremlins 2 was like 2 years ago. I think he was like in Star Trek Deep Space Nine right around this year. I mean, he did stuff. Dick Miller's a good actor.
Yeah. Yes. Yeah. Dick Miller's awesome. I mean, he did mainstream stuff. He did trash. He worked with Roger Corman. And Bucket of Blood is something I wouldn't mind actually watching on this show with you at some point. It's a great old school cult movie.
I'd be down.
You notice that we're talking about everything but this movie just because the
plot is just so weird. And it's like the plot is barely even important to what happens.
Yeah.
But I guess you should like lay out what the gist of the plot is.
So to kind of speed it along in a way, the girls go to the basement of the house. They find an old trunk. There's an ancient dagger in there some sort of ceremonial robe. Whatever. And they a skull, and they get creeped out.
They play with the skull. They touch it. And I'm like, I would not if I thought that something was a real human skull, I don't know that personally I'd be quick to pick it up.
No.
It would depend on the scenario, but I wouldn't just go like, cool.
Yeah.
Human remains, great.
Yes. Oh, Chris, there isn't a very important thing right after this scene though. The girls go upstairs, they make ham and cheese sandwiches on shitty white bread.
Yeah,
and then they all go into the living room, and Roxanne, the loose, slutty, most sexualized girl, does a full-blown striptease for them.
for her three friends, and they're all like into it. That's the thing. Like they're written as going like, cool.
Yeah.
Wow, that's really interesting.
Here's something that's cracked me up watching this again is Meg, the main girl with the glasses, played by Monique Gabrielle. It's set up that she's like the nerd of the group and squeamish and not comfortable with her sexuality.
Right.
And so Roxanne does the striptease and is like, this is how I seduce men, Meg. And then tries to get Meg to dance sexy. And then Meg gets embarrassed and like runs upstairs. And then winds up like stripping and looking at her own perfect body
and going like,
it's so
as though
weird.
She's never seen her own naked body. Like that's the kind of reaction she's giving. Like,
yes.
Interesting.
But here was the thing where they set this up about Meg's character, and then not a big surprise, Chris, but like this doesn't pay off or this isn't resolved at the end of the movie. They could have done something where at the end of the movie, Meg embraces her sexuality and has to like seduce the demon or be sexy and trick him and then kill him. It's like, no.
Then there would have at least been character growth or something like that. You would have set something up that gets paid off at the end. But it's really just an excuse for them to sometimes get naked.
Yes.
Which I guess is like an entertaining special effect in and of itself.
As we're talking about all this nudity, I just imagine people pausing our video and then just being like, I'm just going to watch Evil Toons right now. Like, this sounds great. It's just girls getting naked.
If we're pushing people to watch stuff on Tubi, I'm fine with it.
Yes.
I am fine with it. But Tubi, you really should be sponsoring us at this point, because I think 90% of the movies we've watched have been on your streaming platform.
It's true, man. It's crazy.
Sponsor us. We're cheap.
As Meg is looking at her beautiful naked body, the other girls are downstairs, and the David Carradine character, whose name is Gideon, he shows up and just knocks on the front door and hands them the Necronomicon book packaged in like a grocery bag.
He stopped at Dollar Tree on the way to get some of his ghostly supplies.
Yes, and it's like tied with yarn or whatever, and...
do for you?
Delivery.
The girls sit down, they open the book, and then, I mean, long story short, this book is obviously a demonic, evil thing that once they start reading passages from it, they summon a demon.
Yeah.
I feel like you guys all know where this is going.
It's the same movie as we've already reviewed. It's the... Oh Jesus! I'm literally forgetting the name, but it was my choice. It was the movie with the artists, and when you draw the demon, it comes.
Oh, it's Cellar Dweller. It's
Cellar Dweller. It's the same sort of basic plot where there's like, there's a cellar and there's a magic book, and the book creates a demon. It's just, instead of this demon being like a man in a suit, it's a cartoon.
Yes,
sometimes
And Chris, I did try and do the research on this, but I couldn't find who actually did the drawings.
No, I couldn't either. I did look into that because I was curious, but I couldn't really tell a style either. Like if you look at Chuck Jones, you're like, okay, that's a Chuck Jones animated thing. If you look at Ralph Bakshi, you can kind of tell like, hey, that's Ralph Bakshi. Mm-hmm. I couldn't really tell anything that distinct here.
Yeah. They messed up, dude. They should have got Tim Vigil to do the drawings.
Oh. Well, there you go. Like, this was for 90 seconds, any of us could have done it.
I know. This was peak Faust era, though. They should.
How old were you in 91? You were young then. You don't have to reveal, but you were
16.
Yeah, they should have hired a young Jim LaFood.
Yes.
You would have been like, I'll give you 95 seconds for the same pay as the other man would do 90 seconds. I will give you 5 more seconds, good sirs.
Yeah. The producers were like, we heard this 16-year-old boy in St. Louis is looking for freelance work.
Genius.
We're going to hire him. So Meg is the smart one of the group and knows Latin and winds up reading some of these passages from the evil book.
In the name of God, if you value your immortal soul, never, ever, ever, ever read the above incantation aloud. And I mean don't, never.
Well, that was fun.
And then the other girls, or Roxanne stays downstairs to meet her her boyfriend Biff is going to come over.
Yeah.
And he turns out to be a 40-year-old man who's supposed to be a college student.
Like the thinnest hair you've ever seen in your life. Like the guy has like no hair left.
He looks like one of the jocks from like Revenge of the Nerds.
Absolutely does.
Do you know what I mean? He's like buff and the blonde thinning hair, and it's like, that's not a college guy. That's a 40-year-old man. That man played one season of Canadian football. Yes, exactly. And this, I love this part, Chris, when the girls, Roxanne's downstairs, the other three girls go upstairs to go to bed. And then the dialogue is literally like, let's lay down and go to sleep now. And there's flat sleeping bags on the floor, no sheets, no pillows. And they
don't even climb in.
They just awkwardly lay on the floor.
Yes, it looks like the most uncomfortable thing in the world. It's just like a hard floor with the thinnest sleeping bags you've literally ever seen. Like no pillow, no nothing. Just let's go to sleep. Okay.
Yes.
Don't even turn the lights off. They don't even turn the lights off. That's how fast they were making this movie. They were like, yeah, good enough. And then someone was like, should we actually take a moment to turn the lights off? They're like, you know what? That would probably take a good 40 minutes to relight the set. We'll just say that they sleep with the lights on.
Yeah. This is how, you guys, this is how you know you're watching a trash movie, where when human beings don't act like humans at all.
Basic logic is not present. You're like, oh, they were making this so fast.
Yeah.
No one could catch the most basic thing.
But if you're watching it as an experiment, knowing all this, it is a fun, dumb movie to watch with friends when you're drinking some cold beers on a Friday night. But again, it's like, this is not how people talk or act.
It's so unnatural. All. And what's funny is that like the main character is that actress Gabrielle Monique as the smart girl, but I'll tell you that the most entertaining is definitely Roxanne.
Yes. Yeah. She actually has to do stuff. She has to.
She gets to act.
Where are we at here? Okay, so the creature does come to life, and this is when we get a little bit of animation on this weird Tasmanian devil monster thing,
I guess.
And he basically assaults Roxanne.
It's a little unpleasant, to be honest, but yeah,
it's weird and fucking creepy,
right?
And then he basically murders her, drags her downstairs, and then possesses her body,
right? And so that's how we've gotten past needing animation, folks. Yes. Is the demon or the bad guy is now just played by an actress. So even though the movie is called Evil Toons, it should be more called like Evil Roxanne.
Yeah. There ain't no tunes in this, Chris.
Not many. Not many.
Chris, my quote from me on the VHS box is, there ain't no tunes in this.
There ain't no tunes.
Where's my...
but there ain't no tunes.
Where's my animated monsters and creeps that I signed on for?
Cool World. If you actually wanted like this idea explored, and honestly, I don't love that movie that much either, but Cool World is what actually gives you the animated monsters and stuff like that. Yeah.
Ralph Bakshi.
Yeah.
So Biff does show up. He thinks Roxanne is Roxanne, and she seduces him and then murders him.
Yeah.
We cut
like
to
vampire teeth or something.
Yeah. And that they had to go buy at just like a Halloween store.
Oh, it's awful. I mean, here we go, folks.
You got the red teeth?
Marvel, Marvel just recently gave away these free red teeth with their like blood hunt vampire crossover, and this is almost what Roxanne has.
This is Chris auditioning for Evil Toons Part 2.
Oh, hey, Biff. I'm ready to have sex.
And let us never speak of it again. Let us never speak of it
I'm
again.
sorry, everyone. I probably just gave you worse nightmares than anything in Evil Toons, the horror movie, will do for you.
At least you did something scary, Chris, because there's nothing scary in this movie.
It isn't scary, is it? It isn't scary.
No.
I mean, like, it's framed and presented as though it's a horror movie, and it's literally just not scary. It's not. I mean, this is definitely a movie made for 14-year-old boys to see some boobs.
Yes. Yeah.
They don't have... In an era before there was the internet, you know, like you used to not be able to easily get porn, folks. You used to have to travel into the woods and find a shack full of like porn back.
You had to work hard.
An R-rated movie,
right? And these producers knew, like, okay, this isn't going to get a theatrical release. Hopefully, we make money off the VHS, and word spreads, like you said, among horny boys that, hey, this basically is just a movie of 4 girls running around naked most of the time.
A lot of
and David Carradine in like a cloak and a hat.
Oh, 14-year-olds love that.
Doing stuff. I don't know. So one thing I did want to address again, though, just so Jamie can show the footage, is Dick Miller at home watching himself on TV from Bucket of Blood.
For quite a while, actually.
Which goes on for a really long time.
Like longer than you expect. Like you need like not even 30 seconds or it starts to become awkward. And he watches it for like a minute or two and you're like,
yeah.
Did they have to pad the movie? Oh, of course they did. What am I thinking?
So that means that the producers got Roger Corman's permission, obviously, to...
I bet that they were like, I bet that the script didn't call for him to be watching anything specific. And literally, they probably just asked like, hey, do you have any movies or TV shows that you think you could ask like the producer if we can use? I swear that had to be the case. And Dick Miller's like, I bet I could call Roger Corman and get like, you know, the rights to Bucket of Blood. Like,
yeah. Okay.
I mean, it had to be.
Dick Miller
if they
had
didn't
the
cast
clout.
Dick Miller, you know, if they cast, you know, Larry Hagman or something, we'd be watching Dallas.
Right. Yes.
Yeah.
Boy, Larry Hagman in this movie.
It would have been about the same. I don't know. I
don't
know where I even pulled that from, folks. Larry Hagman has not been relevant since maybe like 1992. I think he played a judge in New Orleans on some CBS show. And people are like, Larry Hagman? So there I go, speaking to our audience.
Us being old men now. But hey, man, my mom was a huge Dallas fan. So just by being in the house with her, I knew of Dallas just because my mom would talk about it on the phone with her girlfriends while she would like chain smoke cigarettes in our house. It's a different era, folks.
That's Larry. Oh, JR, you're such a creep.
When this turns into a review show of Dallas and other like Knots Landing and other 80s trash drama, so nighttime soap operas.
I feel like I am talking about anything I can except the movie. I'm sorry.
I know. So,
but plot
what
wise,
else
like,
happens
what's there
here?
to talk about? Like Roxanne is the demon, and people get picked off. I don't know. Like it's not. There's not a lot of story here, folks.
Well, I can say this. Okay, so Bert goes to the house. Roxanne seduces him. He falls for it. Roxanne kills Bert, and then the 3 other girls react straight out of Three Stooges to it.
That was probably the most entertaining moment in the movie where they all get scared.
Yeah.
Boy, are my feet killing me. What's with you two?
It's pretty funny. I mean, and so Chris, there's also, I'm not trying to read too much into the movie because it's trash, but there is sort of this weird meta element to the movie at times where it's like, okay, so do the girls know that they're in a terrible movie? Are they in on the joke? I mean, I know they're terrible actresses, but there's a scene where like,
you think Monique, like, are they playing to the type of movie that it is.
Yes.
I think that their performances are just what makes it the type of movie it is. I don't think that they quite like intentionally play it like Three Stooges, like I don't think because then I think that they may have pushed it further and it might not have been funny. It might have just been awkward, like when somebody tries to be funny, like I just did, and it doesn't work. I really feel like that was just their performance. That's my take, but I'm open to other opinions. But that's my take. It's just that their delivery is what makes this the type of camp that it is. I don't think that they were trying to play at camp.
Got it. No, you're right. It just becomes towards the end of the movie when they're reacting to all the scary stuff, which isn't scary. It becomes almost like Scooby-Doo reactions. And at one point, Meg, her like ponytail pops out from the back of her head. And
so I think that Fred Olin Ray sort of knew that it was a certain movie, but I don't feel that the actresses, I mean, like I say, there are 4 characters. 3 of them I'm pretty sure were all porn stars, and 1 was just a B-movie actress.
Yeah.
Folks, if things look slightly different, my main camera literally just died and I had to swap, so sorry about if that, I'm just making that clear. I believe I was just about to mention there is technically a 5th female actress in this movie. She also gets topless. We're talking about the Dick Miller, Bert, his girlfriend at home. He goes, I got to go check on the girls. And she's like, it's Friday, though, and takes off her top. And he's just like, I still got to go to work.
Yeah. Yeah.
Every
just another
woman
excuse
in this movie.
Yeah. Just another excuse to get some more mileage with the nudity. And
I mean, I think when you've got a super cheap movie and you want to like get eyeballs on it, like it's crass, but it works like business wise.
Mm-hmm.
You know, nudity, or they say sex sells, and that's all this is. You know, they're like, okay, we've got the gimmick cover. Hopefully people don't actually look at reviews. They just look at the cover, see that there's it's called Evil Toons. It's got a drawing of an evil demon dog. And you know, if they talk about anything, it'll be the nudity.
Yeah. Well, my fascination with these kind of movies isn't, I mean, it's obviously bad, but when I'm watching these kind of movies for fun, it's like, how did this get made? Who made the movie?
Yes.
What's the history of it? Who's the actresses? Okay, they shot this in one location. They obviously just had the house.
Mm-hmm.
It's so low budget and bad, but that backstory of these kind of movies, man, is really what it interests me. And it's kind of like digging for old comic books. I mean, I love the art and the stories, but there's also that backstory of like, who's the publisher if this wasn't Marvel DC? How did this get made? What was the circulation? Like, so I like those, you know, history digging aspects of this kind of culture.
I'm so glad you said that though, Jim, because I'm the same way where sometimes if the movie itself isn't fully engaging me, I start watching it on that sort of next level of like, I'm thinking like, how did they decide on this shot? How did they decide on hiring this person or using this location? And it's like, that's probably not the most entertaining way for some people to watch a movie, but I'm literally just wondering the same thing of how did this get made? And I'm just sort of like trying to watch for you know, am I going to see a boom mic? I don't know, but like, you know, how did they decide to do this?
Yeah. Yeah. It's all that stuff is interesting. And just to wrap up Evil Toons real quick, I will say Roxanne winds up killing all the girls except for Meg. David Carradine shows up at the end of the movie and reveals that the magic dagger kills the beast, or
I don't know.
I may have failed in the past, but this time I'm going to erase you once and for all.
And how do you plan to accomplish that, Gideon Fisk?
With this.
That was like, no, I think that they'd already used the magic dagger and he was like, I couldn't help you before. You had to figure this out yourself. And
yes.
I was like, what? Like, it never makes full sense. Like,
doesn't make
why
sense.
he was like, yeah, I killed myself to become a ghost, but I didn't have the power to help you until now.
Yeah.
And
And
we're
then
like,
Meg throws the Necronomicon book into the fire.
Shades of original Evil Dead.
Yes. And then cut to the next day, Meg wakes up and everyone is alive again.
Which also reminded me of Cellar Dweller. It was crazy how similar it was.
Yeah. And then we have a silly but also Scooby-Doo-ish ending where Mr. Hinchlow, the neighbor, shows up with coffee and a little portable TV, and he's like, who wants to watch cartoons? It's Saturday morning. And Meg screams, and then we cut to credits. So
I don't know, but you guys have some explaining to do.
I don't even remember who I did it with.
At least you're alive.
I brought along my portable TV set in case you'd like to use it.
That's nice, but why?
Hell, it's Saturday morning. Don't tell me you kids don't enjoy a good cartoon.
I know you have
Evil
to end it on
Toons, guys.
something. Yeah, Evil Toons.
Like I said, watch it with friends, have fun, talk and joke throughout the entire movie. There's really no
Do not
story.
treat it with any respect whatsoever.
No. And if you're inviting someone to your place after a first date to watch a movie, do not show them Evil Toons because they'll think you're a weird sex pervert.
And you probably are.
Yeah.
Because we are. That's all I know.
Right.
No, it's... They try to be funny, and the jokes are kind of cringy. You know, like Meg is like, what is it? They get out of the van, which was a plenty big enough van, and they were like, how'd you all fit in there? And we're contortionists. And they're like, what is that? Like a political party? And she's like, Meg's like, well, actually, a contortionist is somebody who can bend their body in unique ways. And they're like, whoa, Brainiac.
Yeah.
And I was like, these are like ABC TGIF level jokes. And,
yes.
And it just feels so weird when you're watching what's supposed to be a horror movie.
Yeah.
Obviously, they were going to have some fun because, yes, like the demon is some sort of a cartoon, but the tone just never quite lands on a consistent tone. It's not silly enough to be a complete comedy or satire. And it's definitely not scary enough to be a horror movie.
Yeah. Well said. And that's sort of it. And again, Chris, I just sort of threw this at you as a suggestion just to kind of be like, not to mess with you, but just be like, I just want to see what Chris's reaction is on this one.
My biggest reaction.
And you did text me right away, which I was in my studio at night inking. I'm 2 hours ahead of you. And when I got the text, I was like, my plan has worked to mess with Chris's mind about Evil Toons.
I started going like, this feels malicious. This feels like Jim Jim wants to get me. Because that is a very weird, dark beginning considering what happens in real life. It's just awkward as hell. It's awkward as hell. And you know what? For this movie, that's fine because there's no consistent tone. Your enjoyment of it will depend on how entertaining you think Monique Gabrielle is.
Right. And that's about it.
When you chose this, I go, not that we have to have a theme. Like, you know, like our first couple episodes didn't really have a theme, but sometimes we just inadvertently get inspired by the other person that picks the first movie. And so when you said that, I go, you know, there's like sort of an early 80s slasher movie that I want to revisit because I hadn't seen it since like ages and ages ago. And so my choice is The Slumber Party Massacre.
Yes.
I will say 1982, let's just talk in general. Was 1982 more or less when slashers really took off? Not the beginning of them, but when they really took off?
Yeah. I would say this is the peak, man.
Yeah. Yeah.
This is
then it
a
like
peak
it stays,
year.
but it falls off, right? Because like by 85, you end up with some pretty trashy sequels. Not that this is high art, but you know, 1978's Halloween definitely kickstarted this as a genre. There'd been Black Christmas, I think, the year before, which is very similar. But by 82, we'd had at least like 2 Friday the 13th movies. We were getting things like Nightmare on Elm Street. I said Halloween. We had Texas Chainsaw Massacre. And then they had lots of knockoffs. Most of them set in the woods, like a sleepaway camp. This one hews way closer to the idea of Halloween. Like this is a Halloween knockoff.
Yep.
It just is. I also was amused at this, though. It's called The Slumber Party Massacre. It got 2 sequels and then also inspired a trilogy called Cheerleader Party Massacre and Sorority House Massacre. So like there were 9 movies in this series, but the first one is called The Slumber Party Massacre.
This is the one and only.
only one.
This is the one and only, folks, except for when we make money and
they made money. They made money.
It was successful.
It's competent enough, and I think that's mostly a testament to the people that made this, and that's somewhat more interesting than the movie itself. I don't know how much you read up on this, but the writer and director, both women, which I thought was sort of notable because the movie does still feel like a sleazy exploitation movie where all the girls get naked, but it's written by an author named Rita Mae Brown, and I saw that pop up on screen, and I go, I've heard that name before. My mother and sister absolutely read her murder mystery novels. She's written tons of them. And so I looked it up. She had written this to be a satire of slasher movies. Here and there is a good joke in the movie, and I'm positive that is a remnant of when this was supposed to be a satire. But it was filmed. The producers wanted to just make a regular slasher movie. They hired Amy Holden. Amy Holden had been a very successful editor in films, but wanted to be a director. She literally turned down E.T. as editor to make this movie. And I'm like, maybe that was the right decision for her career. She went on to make a lot of bigger movies like Made to Order, Beethoven, Indecent Proposal. Medical drama on Fox that ran for like 6 or 7 years called The Resident. So she had a good career, and maybe it was the right decision.
Yeah, it is fascinating when you read that backstory, though, because going back to when Corman hired the writer, he wanted straight up slasher movie, and she said, "Well, no, I want to write it as a satire. And he was like, well, I want traditional, and I also want the formula of the nudity, the violence, the teen kids." And then I feel like Amy Holden, her going for her director's star or whatever, she was like, "I'm going to pass up working with Steven Spielberg." Holy shit, what a decision,
Big decision.
To direct. But that Roger sat her down and was like, "Okay, we're giving this to you, but it has to be this, and this."
I think she understood the assignment. She understood the assignment, because it's got a lot of tropes, if you will. It's got a lot of like the cliche stuff. I counted up how many jump scares are in this, Jim. You want to make a guess how many jump scares, like where somebody isn't killed, just a jump scare?
A dozen?
You're very close. I counted 10. I counted 10 where there was no killer involved. 10 moments where like something just burst. And tell you what, this will be fun. Tell you what, before we even break down, I'll have Jamie put them in order, and I'll just list the 10 jump scares. This is my David Letterman top 10 list. Again, a great timely reference.
Yes. Paul, can we get a little dialing music? Can we get a little top 10 music or whatever?
The top 10 jump scares. We've got the radio alarm turns on, and it's got a woman screaming. The second one, somebody stalks Diane and grabs her, but she gives him a judo flip. It's just her boyfriend.
Holy shit.
The third jump, the coach comes back to her house and a drill comes through the door, but it is just somebody making a peephole. The fourth jump, a neighbor has just snuck into the house and checks on the main character.
Oh, Trish, my God, I'm sorry. I didn't mean to scare you.
The fifth jump, the coach opens her closet and her cat was trapped in it.
Yes.
The
old
sixth,
cat in the closet, Chris. The old cat in the closet.
The most cliche of all. The sixth one, friend Diane happens to be at the window of the party and surprises everyone. Seventh, a neighbor kills a snail with a cleaver. Very weird one.
Gross. Hi, Mr. Contact.
The eighth one, Trish opens her window and there is a bloody Barbie doll staring at her. The ninth, the girls go into the garage to check on the fuse box and there is a kid from school standing right in front of them and scares them. And the number 10, little sister Courtney jumps out of the woods at her sister with a knife just to tease her.
Get off me, you creep!
That damn kid.
That's a lot.
That's a lot. You mentioning the very beginning with the woman screaming on the radio, in less than 2 minutes into this movie, we have boobs. We have Trish get out of bed, take her top off. And it's interesting that women made this movie because I forgot how much nudity there is in this movie. There's like,
and I'll get to
dude, there's a scene when the girls are showering after gym class. There's a shot where the camera is behind this girl and just goes down to her butt. The camera just goes down, and it's like, wow, this is so the women had to play the game of like, oh, you're making this exploitation movie.
I have things to say about both real quick.
It's pretty wild.
It is. It's so lascivious. It lingers. The first moment when the radio is on and Trish is changing, I will say that's one of the examples I have where they definitely kept a joke from the satire version, because the woman's screaming and the DJ, hey, you won a prize. Oh my God, a t-shirt. And she goes, oh. I was like, all right, that's a pretty good joke.
Yeah. Yeah.
And then you're right. The girls, the main girl is named Trish, okay? Her parents are set up as going on vacation. They say the neighbor can check on her.
Mr. Contant will be home all weekend and he'll look in on you.
Hi, Mr. Contant.
Don't worry, I won't let the girls get in any trouble.
Great. We go to school, and people are playing basketball. And right after they play basketball, like Jim said, they take a shower scene. Now, this is still establishing a bunch of the best friends of Trish, and I had the hardest time. I had to watch this movie twice to get their names, because when they get introduced, most of these girls don't really want to just like sort of stare right at the camera. And so we don't see their faces very well. They're either like, in the second shower stall back, or they have their back to the camera and they're having a conversation. It's not a great establishing scene for getting to know these characters. I will say that.
And dude, let's be honest. You as a viewer, you're distracted because these are naked girls lathering up.
I know.
And you're like, okay, wait, who now? Trish is the main girl. Which one is Trish?
And first of all, like, girls themselves are clearly like at least in their 20s. Some of them maybe 30s. Like, again, they're clearly not high school students, let alone like at college or anything. They're supposed to be high school students. The main one tells her parents early on. Trish says like, I'm 18 now. We don't hear that for the rest of the kids. Like, I guess we're just supposed to assume they are all 18 because of how they're being shown to us.
That's
it's
a good
little
point.
Creepy.
Yeah.
The movie does this well. It's about a killer, right? it never goes too far until the next kill. And that includes just killing off random ass people.
Mm-hmm.
There are these two annoying guys that are always spying on the girls and stuff like that. But at first, they hit on a lady installing a telephone at the school.
Dude, the hot blonde telephone maintenance person, like,
are all phone women this pretty?
I wouldn't know.
Would you ever consider dating a younger man? I mean, you know what they say about younger men. Try it, you'll like it.
I hadn't really thought about it.
this could only happen in California. This is shot and it takes place in Venice, in California. So it's like in California, even the phone maintenance people are hot blondes. Like,
LA is a little like that though, where you like walk down the street and it's either like a total weirdo, like pothead or something, or the most beautiful person you've ever seen in your life.
Yes.
It's one or the other.
Yeah.
Yeah, I did kind of like the surprise on that though, because after these two guys sort of hit on the telephone lady, she's at her van. They walk away, and from the open van, she's just yanked right inside and killed by the killer. We get hinted at this with like newspapers and radios. Nobody pays attention to the news. Maybe that's a piece of the leftover satire that just doesn't land, you know, that everybody's ignoring the news.
Yeah. Russ Thorne is the name of the killer.
Let's talk about that, Jim. Is Russ Thorne, like, it doesn't land the same way as like Michael, Jason, Freddy. Is that because those were more iconic movies, or is Russ Thorne just not a threatening name?
I was trying to read into this as like, is he a commentary of he's the opposite of Freddy and Jason and there's nothing supernatural about him? He's just wearing a jean jacket and jeans. He's like just the average blue collar guy killer with not that scary of a name. Is that the point, that he's just a random guy in the suburbs of Venice murdering teenagers?
Except we're told that he was a killer that's escaped.
That's true. That from the radio,
the radio does, and there's a newspaper that's written awkwardly. The newspaper says, "Mass murderer of Russ Thorne escapes."
Oh, that's right.
And I was like, wait, like he's murdered? No, mass murderer of 5 Russ Thorne escapes, but there's no commas. So I'm like, did he murder 5 Russ Thornes?
Yeah. Very popular name in Venice.
The second story below it that I really wanted to read, the Gilmore story. That's a great headline for a newspaper. The Gilmore story. Tell me more.
I didn't even notice that, but
I forgot that
I forgot they did that in the beginning of the movie, though. They had the stereotypical scene of like the paper boy delivering the paper, and the paper reveals what is going on, you know.
So I said one of the things it does well is it will sort of kill off random people here and there just to keep it moving. The thing it doesn't do as well, in my opinion, is the main character, Trish, who we're introduced to, is probably the most passive of all the characters. Like she has a party and like her friends from basketball come over, with the exception of Valerie, who played best basketball, and we're told that she's the new girl. Valerie is invited, but decides to stay home and take care of her younger sister, who still looks like she's 20-something and pretending to be a teenager. But Valerie ends up being treated so much more like the main character, because she does things like in Halloween where she's like looking outside of her window and seeing maybe a shape or something. Like maybe she hears something across the street and eventually she does investigate. It's kind of weird. It's kind of weird how passive Trish is as the protagonist. There's not much to her.
Yeah, it just so happens that we were introduced to Trish in the beginning, and it's Trish's house where everything is taking place. But Valerie being kind of the outcast new girl, we're seeing it through her perspective more so than Trish. The other thing that, this is a whole other thing, man, but the killer using the giant drill.
We should talk about that.
This is obviously a sexual metaphor, right?
It could not like hit you over the head any harder if it was slapping you in the face with a big salami. No, I mean, he uses a power
Speaking
drill.
of metaphors.
I know. It's almost like I knew what I was doing there. He uses a power drill, which I guess fine. Okay. probably also from like when it was parodying how over the top slasher movies could be.
Yeah.
The one thing that like does break here is that it's not a silent weapon. A lot of killers walk around with like a cleaver, a butcher knife, a machete. These are all things that, you know, you can like kill someone without making a lot of noise. You know, they don't, most slasher movies, they're not running around with a gun. Leatherface would be one exception, but it all takes place in his house where people are trapped. But
yeah, he doesn't care.
This power drill killer is like killing people in a van. Is that van completely soundproof? He kills like a girl in a locker room. Presumably there'd be other people in the school. Valerie, like as I've established, is constantly sort of checking on the house next door, but nobody ever seems to hear this power drill.
No.
It doesn't make sense. I
know. And man, even when the creepy neighbor whose name is Mr. Content, is that right?
So. Yeah.
Mr.
He was named
Content.
like a good 30 years before that would mean something, but yeah.
When he is outside the garage in the pitch dark killing snails.
Creepy.
And then the girl walks away and then he gets murdered by the driller killer. It's outside and no one is hearing this murder happen.
Right next to the house.
Good night, Mr. Content.
Good night. Aha, number 54.
And that's a decent, like, sort of funny kill because he's about to kill a snail and instead someone comes behind and kills him. And I'm like, okay, there are moments of entertainment here. This is better than Evil Toons. Sorry, Jim.
Oh, for sure it is.
There's little moments of cleverness there.
Yeah.
But it also doesn't pass the logic check. The other thing is, like, so Trish is the main character. I couldn't really describe her personality to you. Generically sweet.
Yeah.
Valerie, maybe a little bit presented as an outsider, even though she's beautiful. The only character that really has personality, there's also Kim and Linda, but like I couldn't tell you a single thing about them. I really couldn't.
Yes.
There's Diane, and Diane is a little bitchy and a little slutty, but not a lot.
Yeah. Diane has personality though. Like Diane is kind of like
only compared to the others though.
Yeah. But she actually has like a boyfriend that she's meeting up with. She shows up to the party late.
Yep.
She kind of stands out as far as like personality goes because the rest of the girls, man, at the party become just generic girls in lingerie or pajamas that are smoking joints, eating pizza. They got the Maui Wowie though, Chris. They got the good weed. They got the.
Yeah, I know.
There's a scene of them being like, we got this Maui Wowie. It's seedless.
Cast your eyes on this. Maui Wowie. 100% seedless prime bud.
Oh, hi, Mr. Content.
I was just leaving.
And for early 80s, I was like, oh, that's kind of a specific reference for marijuana. Like that's them indicating this is really high quality. And then Mr. Content is still there in the house.
And he's like it's kind of funny. He's like, I won't tell your parents about the marijuana as long as you don't tell them that I scared you. And I'm like, why would they be mad that you checked on their daughter like you said you would?
Right.
Don't tell them that I scared you by accident.
But he is in the house.
I've got a lot of problems.
He does just let himself in the house, though.
Well, he said that the door was open.
Yeah.
He comes off as creepy no matter what.
Oh, Trish, my God, I'm sorry. I didn't mean to scare you. The door was open. I didn't see you anywhere, so I got worried and I came in. I was just checking the house out.
Chris, I'm suspicious of Mr. Content.
You should be. There's no way that's a real name. There's no way. I create content. I'd rather not tell you right now what kind.
Right. Yes.
There's a lot of repetition in this movie as well. That's the only thing. Like there are 2 separate scenes where Valerie goes to check on trash cans that have been knocked over in her backyard. 2 separate scenes.
Yeah.
And a couple times where they have to go into the garage. Once to get firewood, once because the fuses are out. And then technically there's a third time because Diane has her boyfriend park his car in that garage so that they can make out.
Yep.
It's a little repetitious. There's a couple funny things, like when Diane comes back to the boyfriend's car and his head falls off. I was like, okay, decently entertaining. And right when she's maybe about to scream, they cut to a blender making daiquiris, like red daiquiris. I was like, all right,
that's a good cut.
Decent. That's decent.
That's a good cut.
Well, that was a bitch, but now it's done.
The kills themselves are fine, but the special effects, like the gore factor, is pretty small. It's not great, right?
Yeah, you're not getting on-camera explosions of gore and blood splurting. Some of the establishing shots, like when Diane gets killed, there's that super obvious shot of her cowering in the garage. The camera is behind the killer. And man, between his legs, the drill drops, and we have this obviously sexual shot with a girl on the ground terrified of this. And it's all this just blatant metaphor of like the power of the physical, sexual nature.
I'm okay with that, to be honest, to make it a little more explicit, because that is what sort of the horror movies are about in a way. I'm okay with it.
Yeah. And then that, when he gets depowered later in the movie, it's an obvious thing as well, where his bit is literally cut off.
Yeah, I mean, I guess
the drill. I mean, his weapon.
Right. I mean, and to be clear, it's like, there's lots of scenes of like, Russ just sort of picking people off. Like he picks off the 2 boys that come to check on him. Yeah. He picks off each of the girls except for, Valerie and Courtney and Trish, basically. And at the very end, Valerie, who's not really presented again as the main character, she runs out with the machete and cuts the drill in half, and then is able to cut off Russ's hand and slice his stomach. She does all the, like, as soon as his drill is damaged, it's like he's been basically what do you call it? Like turned into a eunuch or something.
He's emasculated.
He's emasculated. Sure. He's emasculated.
And
he's not a great villain, to be honest.
He's not that.
He just doesn't look that threatening.
Yeah.
He's just a really generic guy.
I will say this, though, the last 5 minutes of this movie I do like a lot, because it does sort of go off the rails. And once the big violence kicks in, people are screaming, hands are getting chopped off, the killer falls in the pool, he's not actually dead, he gets out of the pool, there's a whole other thing that has to happen with Valerie murdering him again, and stabbing. And then at the end of all of that, Valerie and her sister comfort each other, and we basically just roll the credits. It's a very kind of quick,
fairly abruptly, once they've actually gotten the threat finally killed. And it does, like you say, like the killer has like been severely injured and falls into the pool. Like a normal person would be dead, but because this is a horror movie, how surprised you are depends on how much horror you watch. He does jump back out, and you're right. Then he's finally like sort of he tries to jump on top of Trish, but she pulls the knife up, and he gets it like right through the chest.
Yeah.
And that's that. There's a couple like other good kills here and there. The coach had been talking to the girls on the phone and heard them scream. And I will talk about that kill that like makes them scream, but she does come to check on them. And by this point they're hiding upstairs. And it's kind of funny. Russ hides himself under a blanket, but he doesn't know anybody's coming yet. He hasn't gone upstairs to chase the girls or anything. He just hides himself under a blanket. The coach comes in and happens to like pull down the blanket, and that's when he emerges and they have a big fight and everything like that.
Yeah.
But I love the idea of a what if, like if Uatu the Watcher just came and is like, in this world, nobody bothered to pull that blanket up. And like Russ just like waited there for like morning time, and the police were just standing over him going like, hey. He's like,
you got any leads?
Because
Yeah.
there was no point to him doing that.
Very
Except
strange.
that they knew what was coming later in the script for him to pop up and get the coach.
Yeah.
But the coach nobody was there for him to hide in that moment.
Yeah, that's almost like out of a spoof movie, like Scary Movie or something.
It's weird.
Like the shot of him though laying down and putting the blanket over himself. It's like,
what
that's
are you
not
doing?
going to work. What? Like,
what are you doing? I also like, but it's effective visually, but it doesn't make sense logically. That's what keeps this from being like quite like better. The pizza guy arrives and knocks on the door, and they're like, how much is it? You know, $6 or something preposterous for today. And while they get the money together, they then open the door and his eyes have been drilled out and he falls into the house dead. But we didn't hear the drill.
Yeah.
And he had just talked like a moment ago.
Yep.
So I'm sorry. It's like, it's frustrating that I'm nitpicking that, but it keeps it from making sense in a grounded enough way to be scared.
Right. No, you're right, man. One cool gag that is in the movie, Valerie's little sister, what's her name again?
Courtney. Who was the star of the sequel, by the way.
Yes. The sequel's incredible.
Played by Crystal Bernard from Wings.
Oh, shit. Good call. Okay.
You don't know all the trivia, Jim. I know less important trivia.
That's awesome. When her and Valerie are in the kitchen of Trisha's house.
Yes.
And
they decide to like make a sandwich or something.
Courtney has her back to the camera and is opening the fridge door, and there's a corpse in there that keeps almost falling out, and then she closes the door again. The corpse goes back.
Kim is
that
dead.
Happens 2 or 3 times, and it's a good gag.
It
is. It's well done.
That's why this movie's just entertaining enough to be worth watching, is for little moments like that. Although you're also sort of like, when the hell did Russ have time to hide some of these bodies? Because there's other things like where one of the dudes runs through the garage, and while he's jiggling the doorknob, Diane's corpse like falls down from the rafters somehow. Yeah. And you're like, when did Russ have time to set up these surprise? Here's your friend.
Yes.
But that's okay. You know, we've basically said what we need to say. I would probably recommend this movie if you're into slasher type movies. It's a decent enough entry, and it's fascinating to think that it was written and directed by women when you consider how it doesn't really break any of the tropes. It's still exploitative, and that's just interesting. You wouldn't have expected them to want to go there.
Oh yeah, man. Yeah. And one thing I do really like about this movie, like what Halloween gets right as well, and they stole a lot from Halloween, is the idea of like the suburbs being scary. Yeah. You know, even though this is Venice, it's not the Midwest, obviously, but I grew up in the suburbs in the Midwest, and the idea of like hearing ghost stories or stories about killers from older kids at school, or it kind of plays into that fear of like when your parents are away, what can happen in the dark in a suburban neighborhood. And it just so happens there's a maniac killer running around randomly killing teenagers.
I agree with you.
This flick kind of taps into that a bit of like that suburban fear, which I like.
Well, I think any movie that sort of plays on a place where you think you should be safe just isn't safe. You know, like your own home with your friends, it isn't safe. You're like, okay, cool. Just like, you know, you could look at other movies and be like, The Innocence of Summer Camp, it should be safe.
Exactly.
Your own dreams should be safe. Go swimming at the beach, you know, like should be safe. And like when you make that unsafe, it's effective. You start like seeing something that you typically aren't scared of as a scary element, like where you just don't want to be in that location. That's when a movie's doing something well. You know, Evil Toons possibly could have gotten something like that, because when I was growing up and I was like not quite old enough to get a part-time job, I would go babysitting, and there was something a little scary about being in somebody else's house when it's quiet and the lights are out and everything, like the sun has gone down. And Evil Toons could have possibly done that because they were cleaning some other house. It just never really hits that tone. They leave all the lights on.
There's no mood at all to Evil Toons. And at least Slumber Party Massacre does have mood and atmosphere to it.
It's got enough money that, most of the shots are set up well and lit okay. I wouldn't call any of them necessarily artistic or that interesting, but they're competent. There's like a base. I love that we're at the point where like, hey, there's a base level of competence to this movie. Highly recommended.
Well, for this episode specifically, it's like we chose more bottom of the barrel. But dude, Slumber Party did make $3.6 million off a $220,000 budget. So people did go business. See this.
Yeah, that's plenty good business. That's a huge profit on this. Who wouldn't be happy to invest that amount and get that kind of a return? That explains why they made 8 more.
Yeah.
Oh, technically 9 more because there was a reboot. Now that I think of it, there was a reboot of Slumber Party Massacre.
Oh, that's right. I
never saw it, but yeah.
I haven't either. And man, I don't want to talk too much about it because I would really love to do it on the show. But Slumber Party 2 is where it's a lot of amazing
stuff. Yeah.
With the rock and roll greaser killer, like it is.
I almost chose that, but I was like, let's start with the first. But yeah.
No, I'm glad you started with this one because this one I feel like is quintessential standard. Like, hey, if you're going to watch the early 80s slasher movies, you got to watch this one. It's cool.
It's there were so many. There were so many. I've never tried to sort of get a count or anything because, of course, other countries started making stuff. I think, for instance, Black Christmas, which sort of like, again, was a precursor of Halloween. I'm pretty sure that was a Canadian one, for instance.
It is.
Yeah, it was. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, but now that I think of it, director Bob Clark, who then famously made A Christmas Story. So he made 2 very famous Christmas movies.
Yeah. That's so mind-blowing that the guy who did Christmas Story made this horror movie,
which is pretty effective.
Like, man, it's like this guy can make lots of different stuff. He's good.
Yeah.
So, but yeah, I'm glad we did.
Me too.
We took a break from our extreme quality and did just a trash show.
We were getting with Night of the Comet. I think we were approaching too close to good movies. we had to take a number of steps back on this. But why don't we even hint what we'll do next? Not even hint. We could just tell people because I thought you had a great idea for next episode.
Yeah, I was suggesting Howard the Duck and Swamp Thing, the original Wes Craven Swamp Thing, as late 70s, early 80s Marvel versus DC.
I think that's a good idea.
And the other thing, here's the weird thing where my head's at, man, is I associate Howard the Duck with Man-Thing, obviously, because they did a lot of team-ups in the late 70s, early 80s. Marvel and Howard had his weird black and white magazine for a bit. And so to me, there's a direct correlation between Howard and like Swamp Thing, like these swamp muck monster type guys.
I agree.
So I think that'll be a really fun, terrible exploration of
and
these
I think
movies.
Anybody that knows us is probably into comics, so that's a good idea to every once in a while hit comic book things on this channel when we can. But those are some good options. I'm excited to do that.
But before I forget, Chris, you recommended a superhero movie from the early 90s that I do want to cover at some point. That is like, oh, there has to be a perfect counterbalance to that movie. We'll figure it out.
The 1994, I want to say, Captain America movie is just abysmal. So bad.
I've only seen it once, and it was years ago. I only remember the weird. He's got plastic ear coverings.
He does. I remember. It's so funny. Like back then, Marvel was so proud of themselves to make any sort of movie, and they would just brag in their back of their comics, like Stan's soapbox or something like that. They go, "We've got Matt Salinger, the son of famous author J.D. Salinger," and I was like, "Why is that a selling point for being Captain America?"
I don't know.
That's nothing. That doesn't mean anything.
Yeah. it's like, is that supposed to tap into some level of Americana or?
And Red Skull is played by the roommate of Alan Moore's nephew.
Right. Yeah.
Anyway, I had a blast talking about these movies with you.
This was awesome.
It's more, I literally had a little more fun talking with you about Evil Toons than I did watching it.
Yes.
Thank you.
I was kind of hoping that would happen because you can't really, it's pointless to go through the movie scene by scene because it's just, it's so bad.
Right.
But
it's like we'd be making fun of the same stuff again and again. There's only so much you can observe on these movies. They don't have that much depth. But what do you got to plug?
Oh, man. You guys can check out all my stuff on social media, just under my name at Jim Mafood. Go to my website for books, prints, and lots of fun. I'll be at Heroes Con next month in June.
Very cool.
And Dragon Con after that at the end of August. And those are my 2 summer conventions.
Cool. And
what do you got, Chris?
For me, I just got, comic tropes I'd recommend. I feel like I've put out some good episodes lately. And I'm not a guest or anything, but we've got here in Washington something called the Summer Con, and I'll be going to that on Saturday in the middle of June. So if you see me, I'm just saying, say hello. I'm excited. It's so cool, Jim. We've got a state fairgrounds in this town called Puyallup, and they've been having this summer convention there. It's something so small, like $10 or $15 to go, but it's humongous, and tons of actual comic book vendors, and they fly in name guests and stuff. They really do a good job for the convention. It's such a
that's
good
awesome.
Because
is that a 2-day show or?
I think it's 3 now. I think it's cool. Friday through Sunday now. Yeah.
Nice.
So that's kind of cool. It's smaller, I suppose, but sometimes those are the best conventions early on when you just have a quality promoter that brings in actual comic book guests and stuff like that, doesn't charge a fortune, and you just get a good value. I have fun at something wild and crazy like New York Comic Con, but it's expensive.
Yeah.
It's expensive.
Yeah, the big shows are more like an experience that it can be baffling and overwhelming, where the type of show you're talking about, man, I like to go to those shows and not even be a guest, but just to go so I can shop and hunt for comic books.
That's what I do.
Because those are the kind of shows where you can actually find comics, and you can buy comics at New York Comic Con as well. There's some great vendors there, but just the hassle sometimes of walking through the crowds.
It's tough.
You have to mentally prepare for
and you have
New
to
York
go
and San Diego, and
you have to have an idea of what you want to accomplish. Otherwise you'll get distracted and just sort of wander.
Yeah.
The thing I like at the big conventions is they typically do have a good size artist alley where you can still find some cool stuff. And there's amazing cosplay to just look at and take pictures. So that's cool. Anyway.
Yeah.
Enough plugs. We had a great time, folks. Check out our links in the description below. Thank you to our editor, Jamie, as always. We couldn't do it without him. The important,
we love you, buddy.
invisible, third, invaluable member of our show.
We'll get him to make a cameo.
That could be fun.
Point.
That could be fun.
Or he'll just remain mysterious and people will be like, there's no Jamie. You guys are making this
It's up to Jamie, but maybe someday Jamie will suggest a movie that we have to watch or something like that. So.
Oh, shit. The Jamie guest host episode.
Who knows? Who knows? Just surprise people.
Okay.
And then he's just turns out Jamie is a Quado, and I just lift up my shirt and I'm here. Sorry. All right. We're not going to top a Quado joke. Good night, folks.
Night, guys.
Trash Movie Bonanza. Like and subscribe. Thank you.